Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to put your hands together and welcome our next panel, Danish Fintech 2.0.
Det var godt. Undskyld.
Have a seat.
Thank you.
Sætter du der? Oh, sorry.
All right. Welcome, all of you, and it's great to see that the interest in fintech is not just something that those of us working in the fintech industry tell each other that fintech is hot. Why fintech is hot, how hot it really is in Denmark, is there such a thing as Danish fintech, some of the topics that we are going to touch upon today. But before we dive into the dialogue, I would like to briefly ask our dear panelists to make their own introductions, so you know what kind of angle, their role in the Danish fintech scene, and yeah, let's start from the side here, Jørgen.
Hi, I'm Jørgen. I'm the founder of Cardlay. We do front-end software on top of issuing banks in 16 infrastructure, making new services for the bank, meaning new revenue streams as travel expense management, card management, VAT, reclaim. And we tap into international banks and build our business together with the international banks' existing portfolios.
Thank you. Tanja?
My name is Tanja. I'm an attorney here in Denmark. I work for a law firm called Kammeradvokaten, at which I founded the fintech team 2 years ago, and I think now we are the largest team advising on regulatory aspects about fintech.
Yeah, Lotte?
My name is Lotte Marschall. I work as a board member in one of the big finance corporations in Skandia Pension. And I also work with 3 startups, 2 in fintech and 1 in tech. And 2 of them are present here today, Swiipe Payments and NORD.Investments.
Cool. And Mr. Fintech himself?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, I'm Simon. I am one of the founders of Copenhagen Fintech, which is an organization, member-based organization put in the world to grow the Danish fintech scene. So we are a provider of services for startups and corporates and try to build the ecosystem together.
Thank you. And a few words about me. My name is Kristian Sørensen. I'm the co-founder of Norfico. We are the first and still only strategic advisory and PR agency in the Nordics with a dedicated focus on fintech. So we work with both new players in the industry as well as the incumbent players who are looking to understand what's going on in this marvelous world of fintech. So let's dive into maybe some of the numbers. How big is the Danish fintech scene, Simon?
Yeah, I should know. No, it has been an incredible growth in the Danish fintech scene. Depending on how you measure it, we did the first mapping of kind of the fintech SME startup scene in late 2015. We counted around 70 companies at that stage. I just did an update on this, and now we have more than 210 SME startups in the Danish fintech scene, meaning that we have tripled the amount of startups, SMEs, in less than 3 years. It's amazing numbers. Adding the fact that not a few companies have died during the way, it actually means that me and my colleagues have met another fintech company once a week in the last 3 years. That's a lot of companies in Denmark.
That's pretty impressive. And throughout this dialogue, we should dive into what has fueled this growth. But I would like to ask you, Lotte, you from the business angel and also board member perspective, yeah. How do you see the Danish fintech scene? What drove your interest and what brought the attention?
There's no doubt that there's a hype about fintech right now, and I've just finished a fundraising for Swiipe Payments with a huge interest from business angels, private investors. And though they're still questioning the valuations, which are a little bit higher than you see otherwise, there's a huge interest from the business angel side. I think also we will see that if we can explain more, what this is all about, we will see a much wider interest in among the business angels, and not just those that have worked in the finance sector themselves.
Yeah. And Tanja, the regulatory environment also plays a role. It can be very easy or very difficult, depending on what you try. What kind of role do you see as a lawyer the regulatory scene play in order to fuel the growth?
Well, I think that's actually why fintech is one of the most interesting market to be in as a lawyer, because regulation is one of the key drivers, together with technology, together with customer demands. And that means that we as lawyers are put in a very early stage when companies are developed, when new digital projects are launched by a large financial institution, that we actually play a key role in the business decisions, and we're not just someone that being who should be asked at the end for some legal opinion, but we're actually in there forming the business ideas, because regulation is forming such a huge part of the businesses nowadays.
Is the regulatory environment good in Denmark for fintechs?
I think it has become better. I mean, most of our regulation is based on EU regulation, so it's similar throughout Europe. Where there is a difference among the different member states, it's how it's applied, and the access to the regulatory body. And there we have seen a lot of changes with the FSA the last year, opening up, being more friendly to entrepreneurs. But also we have seen not just our law firm, but actually I think we're now 8 law firms in our FinTech Connect program, with lawyers offering pro bono services for startups to make sure that they can navigate this regulation. And that, I think, is very unique for Denmark. I haven't seen anything like that anywhere else.
Yeah.
So very proud of that.
Good to hear. Jørgen, you actually run a fintech. You started a real company. How is it to be a fintech in Denmark?
I really thought about that question, because actually it's kind of irrelevant if it is in Denmark, because if you believe that you're going to make a fintech, you have to think internationally or globally from the very start, because Denmark is simply too small to build a relevant fintech. I think that the initiatives that we have seen with the Copenhagen Fintech Lab has been great. We've been a part of it, and that has given us an opportunity to meet many more banks globally, coming in and visiting us from Canada, Singapore, all Central Europe, etc. And that has given us faster opportunities and accessibilities to strong opportunities. That said, resources are really scarce. So we have a continuous search of 10 people, trying to get people into our team. We have to outsource for other countries where we can find resources. We are fighting to keep all front end on all design and all architecture inside. So I would say, coming in as a new fintech, it will be difficult, and it is growing more difficult. So you have to be really aware of that, starting a fintech company in Denmark. Last, I see one of the questions is about why the banks haven't opened more. But actually what has happened during the last 2.5 years, also in the FinTech Lab, is actually a total mind change in the banks. 2.5 years ago, everybody thought, yeah, we're going to do it ourselves. 1.5 years ago, they started thinking about, if we're going to do it, will it actually have a relevant reason to be in the market when we're finished with it in 5 years as a bank? So now we see a lot of embracement from the banks. Everybody's opening. You see all the also exhibitors here, that they try to embrace fintechs because they know that they have to do that, because they cannot do all the development they need to themselves at the same time as compliance, GDPR, opening for PSD2. So I see a strong growing environment. I see that you have to think international, and I see that we have to do something to actually call for resources to come to Denmark, because we simply cannot educate them fast enough ourselves.
But with that perspective, and also adding that it's EU regulation, most of the regulations, does it even make sense to talk about Danish fintech? Is there such a thing as Danish fintech?
I think, of course, it's relevant to discuss, because if you're Danish and you start up at the company in Denmark, but you have to think the Danish fintech as an international player from day one, because else you do not have a fintech.
Yeah.
That's my clear observation.
Yeah, Tanja?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, we have to remember that even though it's EU regulation, that the whole EU system is built upon a passport system. So that means if you have to get a license and you get the license in Denmark, it's very easy to go abroad. And so far, we have seen UK being very, very good at attracting fintech very early on because of their whole banking sector and how the regulators over there were very early on with a regulatory sandbox. Now we have a Brexit, we have a political situation very much up in the air. I think there is plenty of room for Danish fintech, but I will also stress that Copenhagen Fintech and the work they're doing for setting up partnerships, not only within Europe, but all around the world, is so important because there is so much innovation happening, both in Silicon Valley and China. If we don't collaborate, we are going to fall behind.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm quite often asked that question. What is special about Danish fintech? And I think it's actually a hard question. I think it's not easy. I think it's also something that we need to work on when we're talking about where should we take Danish fintech moving forward. Because I think when we started up this, I think it's fair to say that there were not such a thing as Danish fintech. Now we have we are mentioned. We are one of the places in the world where we see fintech going on. So now I think it's important that we work on the specialization, on finding our niche here. And I would say it's a little bit like the Danish design thing. It's cool design, but it's also when you have a Danish chair, it's designed good, the material is good, and it's also comfy when you sit in it. And I think that I think Cardlay, for example, is a brilliant example of that. When you see it's just good quality. It's hard to kind of define what it is, but its design is good.
But it's also bloody expensive. So maybe that's to your valuation point. Is that why the Danish fintechs are gets higher valuation because they're Danish?
I don't think it's as simple as that as probably a lot of other things. But I think in order to move to the next step, we need the society and the corporations that are already in as partners. I think we need to go to the next level and to a deeper cooperation in all aspects. We also need to be better at communication. I mean, when I speak to my friends that I work with fintech, they think it's something that's based in Finland. So we need to really not adopt what the finance sector has been known for in order to communicate as clearly as possible and not as complex as possible in order to go out wider with the message. Make this something that everybody speaks about.
Yeah. And Simon, those international collaboration bridges that has already been mentioned, we have one in place with Canada and one with Singapore. Will that be part of that international branding and awareness and something that can also maybe build the pride of Danish fintech?
Yeah, I think so. I think also when we talk about next step, I think the whole internationalization, globalization thing is the next step for us. Now we have something good going on, but we have a lot of companies now ready to scale, and we need to make these bridges to make an easier access for them to scale. And also we're very interested in dragging in new talent to the Danish ecosystem. We want foreign startups to come here and start their business here. I think that'll be a major achievement from the bridges we're building.
So, Jørgen, do you see these bridges as something that you can use to catapult your company out into the world, or is it to attract talent, money? How do they work for you?
So, of course, some birds actually fall in your casket. Very few, but actually we saw some good opportunities coming in through these bridges. Of course, like anything else, you have to fight out there and go abroad, market yourself, approach so many people to actually give yourself the opportunities that you can actually finally achieve and get the right contracts. But 100%, what we saw 2.5 years ago until now, I think it's not easy now, but I think it's easier because there is some rails that you can actually start up on. So I would say that if you have a strong idea and you want to build a new fintech startup, I see the opportunities, if you have the right people and the right tools and the right idea, much better than they were 2.5 years ago. So I certainly think that we have built something relevant in Denmark, and this is something that we will support as well. We're trying to, kind of give back all what we have learned so that the new companies will not meet the same obstacles that we have for the benefit of everybody.
Yeah. Does that also apply to the legal part of collaboration abroad?
Just a quick comment to Jørgen and Simon. I think we should actually be very proud of what Copenhagen Fintech has managed to establish in just 2 years. I just came back from a conference where I met a lot of people working with incubators, and when they heard about the whole ecosystem that Thomas and Simon has actually built around this, that it's not just an incubator for entrepreneurs, it's not just an office space, but it's actually partnering up with all the different big financial institutions. It's international collaboration, it's accounting firms, it's law firms, it's PR firms. It's all these entities coming together to support this system. Going forward and pushing Denmark forward within fintech is something that we can be extremely proud of in this country, I think, and something very unique I haven't seen anywhere else.
No.
I will hug you afterwards. Yeah, definitely. Definitely, I'll give you a hug for that.
But is that collaboration spirit, is that what makes this Danish? Is that what we do well here? Is that working together? Is that?
I think it's part of it. We're a small country, and I think the stakeholders are talking to each other, and they also want to talk to each other. And I think it's important that they also have like the meeting spot that we have now in Copenhagen. I think a lot of the stakeholders who come there say that, well, this is just easy for us to meet the other stakeholders in one place.
Yeah.
So I think it's important, but and I think it's a bit special. The thing we have going in.
But do you think that is rooted back in the financial services industry that historically have had good collaboration?
I think we have had a long tradition for doing collaboration within the financial services. Can also be a danger. We've seen that also in the joint IT-owned companies early on. They were owned jointly by the banks and the insurance companies. In my sense, they weren't expanding and scaling the way we would like the new startups to do. But I think there's a nature of working together and a history of working together, which is very important.
Yeah, but that history has sometimes also made the financial services industry quite slow. From a board perspective of the startups, how do you make sure that they don't become too complacent in what they do and keep them on their toes?
I don't think that's a challenge at all, because working with startups, that's what makes me interested in this, because there's so much drive and so much energy. So it's more about trying to prioritize and focus. But it's right that that is what the problem or the challenge in the large corporations, that to have the innovation, to live side by side with the old conservative systems that they are running, and so I think the partnerships would be excellent opportunities if we could have more corporates partner up with startups to build projects together and develop together. That would be beautiful, because then you had the best of both.
And I can actually see that some of the questions, and the one that have so far gotten the most votes, is exactly on that topic, on the slowness of the incumbent players. Are we facing that change now, or is the change also slow?
The change is slow. I don't know if we're facing it. I'm hoping. That's part of why I don't just work with the corporations now, but also work with the startups. But I think they are adopting more and more. But
another question that was before related to regulation and PSD2, where the banks are all of a sudden forced to implement certain things, and also all of the banks that I've spoken to see the opportunities as well, but they also see that they probably have difficulties realizing those opportunities. Do they turn to startups for regulatory reasons as well, or compliance reasons?
That is still something we have seen very early on. We see a couple of the RegTech companies now coming into Denmark. We see more of it abroad. We've seen a few companies here in Denmark, but nothing really that has rocked the big scene. Most of it has been done in digital solutions for AML, onboarding, and something in MiFID II. And we've seen some of the larger banks in the UK, especially in MiFID, to handle those rules because it's so complex. But it's definitely an area that's very interesting because one of the major challenges right now for larger banks is the compliance cost. It's no secret that after the financial crisis, some major legislations have come into force the last couple of years and are coming in right now, and that's again what's drive new innovation because we simply have to keep the costs down, and that of course inspired to new innovation. So it's going to be interesting to see the RegTech solutions coming into the market over the next coming years.
Yeah.
I actually see it as both an advantage and competitive advantage. For example, for us, because we're through it, we made both the PCI DSS certification. We are audited by one of the biggest Swedish banks, meaning like audited more than you'll be done from the Finanstilsynet. So actually, this is one of the obstacles that you will meet as a fintech startup when you're going and work with the banks, because you have to live under the regulations and you're in the auditing from the bank, and this is, it's major task in your business. It's not just building a great app and putting in some great design and putting in some architecture. It's a question about processing and handling information, communication, data, etc. under the auditing of the banks. So I see it both ends, that if you can come through it and pass it and find clever people that can help you in that level for packages that can make it easier, it will actually be a competitive advantage. Now we look into international banks and already audited now by a Swiss bank and a Swedish bank. It's much easier to gain the next contract. So now it's an advantage.
But who's helping whom? Is it the startup helping the bank, or is the bank helping the startup?
I would say on this first run, actually we're helping the banks because we're pushing to make it happen. So that would take maybe 9 months if they had to run it in their pace, but we can make it together with them maybe in 3 months because we simply push them and ask for what's going to happen. If they want to process and processing, then of course it's a slow pace that you will experience.
Yeah. Tanja, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, I agree, and it's I think a lot of, or at least that's how it used to be. I think it's starting to change a little bit, but a lot of startups underestimated what it actually means to make a partnership with a bank. Because, as you said, you can build a great app. It's a great design. You can see that you're solving some kind of headache for the bank's customer. But as soon as you come into a bank, they're under very strict regulations. They have a huge compliance department. They have legal people. And as soon as they see a contract with a startup and their job is to protect the banking license, they get a little nervous, and they also need to get used to the idea of having a partnership, figuring out where the data is stored, are there any interaction with customers that could jeopardize our license, and all these things. So it's a journey, and it takes a while for everyone to get used to, and it's not something that's just happening overnight.
I see several of the questions that has passed through here is also related to open banking. Back to the question about collaboration culture between the Danish banks and also infrastructure collaboration. Is that something that can give Denmark a competitive edge in terms of attracting open banking startups?
It's definitely a huge issue. I'm not sure there was a question here, are we worse or better than other places? I don't think we're worse. I think we are, as Jørgen also said, that there's been a huge change in the last few years. I think we're getting better, and I think it's really the startups we talk to who are talking into relocating or starting business elsewhere. They are for real interested in, are their partners willing to do partnerships, or do they have the infrastructure in place, and do they have the mindset in terms of working with a startup from another culture and stuff like that. So the openness with the established sector is hugely important, and that's also an issue that we're working with. But I think I don't think we're worse than elsewhere, and I think we are moving quite fast there.
Yeah. With only 5 minutes left to go, I would like to pick up on the topic of broadening the anchoring of Danish fintech, broadening the knowledge, as you mentioned, Lotte, the communication part of things. I mean, as Danes, whenever you meet a Dane somewhere, you are absolutely sure that they will tell people about Lego or Maersk or bacon. How do we add fintech to this list? How do we make fintech great again? Or
I think we should build on what has been built in Copenhagen Fintech Lab. There's a number of network that has been built up with the corporates and also internationally. But if we look at just Denmark, a lot of companies are actually connected in in some way to Copenhagen Fintech Lab. So we just need to reach out to the next level in the corporations and to involve more people. I think it's going to spread. Because very often the corporation is just represented by one contact person in the company. And the companies are, as I said earlier, very conservative. And a lot of skepsis in the companies say, why are you spending your time on that? Yeah. So you need to involve more people and make it spread.
Yeah. And Simon, do you think, is it this trickle-down approach where through the corporations we can spread the word and then they will tell their friends and family, or is there also a grassroots push to broaden the knowledge?
I think I would really like that one of what I would call the new generation of Danish fintechs really took off and really made it into taking Europe from Cardlay or Luna Way, or some really took off. And so I think we need that in terms of really selling what's going on.
Good story.
Yeah, because I think some of the older fintechs like Saxo Bank or SimCorp, they're not really considered kind of in that field somehow.
So I think we rely on you, Jørgen. Make it big to make it.
No, but really, I think that if you see through the last 3 years, we have built. I could mention 5, 8 companies that actually are growing with an opportunity actually to build something really big. We did not have those companies 3 years ago, and that is showing that this is possible, and that is attracting talent, and that is attracting new entrepreneurs to try to start up because they see that it happens, because they see a potential light. So I think that we are in much better shape than we were 3 years ago, and we are building on that right now. So we have to keep the pace, and as Lotte said, communicating about successes, communicating about when we address new relevant opportunities. We have been, trying to communicate a lot about the Nordic design. This is in our genes. Why not use this in our future front end as one of our key elements? So we have to find those anchoring to make, strong communication about the Danish fintech, because for sure we have opportunities and we have talent.
Yeah. Tanja, for the final comment, you just spent a lot of time in San Francisco and being part of the global tech community there. How do we position Denmark and Danish fintech there?
Well, I think we're already doing a good job, but I also agree that having those companies where there are success, and we're not afraid to celebrate that. We should also be celebrating when we make mistakes and talk openly about that. But we have some companies, some fintech companies who are doing great. Cardlay, November 1st, Coinify, a lot of very good companies that are now beginning to scale. Pleo, we could mention at least 10 to 20 that are now growing companies. And I think it's very important that we celebrate those people who are actually daring to step out of the corporate life and take the chance and become an entrepreneur. But it's also important for our entrepreneurs to step forward and be on stage and talk about both their successes and but also what they make of mistakes and how hard it actually is. Because if we can really get a community about that, being an entrepreneur, it's going to come. And we're already a long way, but much more we can do.
And with those closing remarks, I would like to thank you all for your time and attention, and lots of good questions. I would advise you to take hold of some of the lovely people in the panel to get them answered after this session. And also, of course, a big thank you to the panel. It was very insightful. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it.
Tak for i dag.